Everyone talks about making money with sports cards, but no one actually shows you how to do it. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through exactly how to make $1,000 per month with sports cards. Now we're going to break this into 3 phases. So the first phase is the plan. We've got to figure out how we're actually going to get to our goal. Phase 2 is finding the cards. So once we know the plan, we've got to figure out what are the cards that are actually going to help us achieve that plan. And then phase 3 is taking action. So once we know the plan, once we know the cards we're going after, I'm going to walk you through step by step how to actually execute on this. All right, let's dive in. We'll start with phase 1, the plan. So the first thing we have to address is there are so many different strategies we could use to make money with sports cards. So which one do we actually pick? Guys, I've been doing this for a long time. I've probably tried more strategies than you knew existed in the card market. And I'll tell you one thing that I've learned is that some actually work and some don't. And then some of them are consistent and some are not. And so what I like to focus on are the strategies that 1, work, right? And then 2, are actually consistent. Because I'm not looking for a one-time win here. I'm looking for something repeatable where I can create cash flow. So less is more here. We need to focus, and there's really no reason to get cute here. We just need to follow a proven and repeatable strategy, and that is grading. So we're going to grade our way to $1,000 per month. The reason I like grading is because it's controllable. It's a learnable skill. The more we do of it, the better we get, and that's when the results start to become more and more predictable as we get more and more reps. All right, now I'm going to warn you in advance, this next part might seem a little bit boring, but it's actually the most important part of this entire video. Because if you don't do this, you can basically forget about ever hitting your goals. You're just not going to get there. And so the key here is we have to understand, what does it actually take to get to $1,000 per month? Because anyone can say, yeah, I want to make $1,000 a month, but no one actually knows what that means unless we can break it down. And so the way I like to break this down is to think about it like this. So I can either make $1 on 1,000 cards, I can make $10 on 100 cards, I can make $100 on 10 cards, I can make $1,000 on 1 card, right? There are lots of ways to slice this, but we have to actually do the math and understand, what is it going to take to get there? And we have to keep in mind, some of these paths are a lot more realistic and a lot easier than others. Like, I don't know about you, but making $1 on 1,000 cards every month sounds pretty miserable from a business model perspective. So that's probably not the approach I'm going to take here. Now, I want to tell you a quick story about this. So inside my card investing community, we have a member, let's just call him John. Now, John wanted to make $1,500 per month so he could use card money to pay for his mortgage every month. Pretty cool goal, right? Now, he was grading cards regularly and he was even making some money, but the profits were inconsistent and he really wasn't anywhere close to his goal. So what we did is we modeled out the exact path that he was on at that time, and we looked at what were the types of cards he was submitting and what was the actual maximum upside. And very quickly, John saw what the problem was, because he realized that his best case scenario, if he got all PSA 10s on his order, which no one does, by the way, he was only going to make about $700 based on his average submission. And John doesn't get 100% gem rate either. No one does. So he was having these months where he'd make $200, then $450, then a good $550 month, then back to $300. So there was just no consistency there, and he couldn't figure out what was going wrong and how he could actually get to that next level. So modeling it out changed everything for him, because he realized he was losing in the draft. No matter what he did, no matter what grades he got, he wasn't going to get to that $1,500. And that's when he changed the types of cards that he was submitting, and guess what? The results followed. So he sent off a submission the very next month using the new strategy. A few months down the road, when that order came back, that was his first $1,500 month. So doing the planning is what takes us from a wishing program to a work program. And that's when the results start to get a lot more predictable. Okay, so back to $1,000 per month, and how do we want to get there? So once again, I don't know about you, but my time is pretty valuable to me. So I don't have time to sell 1,000 cards every single month for only $1 a piece. I want to make a lot more per card than that. And I don't want to put that much time into it if I don't have to. So for this example, I'm going to be targeting cards that I can make $250 of pure profit on, because that means that I only need to find 4 of them that get PSA 10s for the month. That seems pretty doable, right? Now here's the kicker. There are going to be cards that we buy that aren't gradable, that we're going to sell at cost and lose a little bit of money money. We're also going to get some non-10 grades. We're going to get some PSA 9s. We're going to get that random PSA 7. And so I actually am going to target one extra PSA 10 to make sure that we have enough money to make up for that and still have $1,000 of pure profit left over. So my target here is to have 5 cards that get PSA 10s worth $250 of profit each. Now, once again, nobody gets a perfect 100% gem rate. So I'm probably going to have to send 8 cards to get 5 that actually get 10s. And here's the other part of this. If I want to send 8 cards, I'm not just going to be able to send the first 8 cards that I buy, right? Like, we're not going to be able to see condition perfectly from eBay. So that means I'm probably going to have to buy more like 15 cards. And of those 15, I'll end up picking the best 8 and send those off for grading. So when you're grading, you got to keep in mind, it's not the number of cards you're sending, and it's also not about the value of those cards, at least not necessarily. The thing that matters more than anything else is the upside of each card. How much upside is tied to a PSA 10 grade for that particular card? All right, so quick summary here. We buy 15 cards, we send 8 of them. We're looking for 5 PSA 10s, and that's going to give us enough margin to cover the $1,000 of profit, plus some extra margin to cover any non-10 grades and any cards that we have to liquidate raw. Pretty straightforward, but now it's very clearly laid out, and now we know exactly what we need to go find, which leads us right into phase 2, finding the cards. So we already know we need to find cards where there's at least $250 of margin created by a PSA 10. Now, the other thing I like to look at is the gem rate, which is kind of like the success rate for a particular card. So gem rate is just the number of PSA 10s or gem mint grades divided by the total number of cards that have been graded. So if we send 10 cards, we get 7 PSA 10s. 7 divided by 10 is a 70% gem rate. Simple, right? But what this does is it gives us a clue about which sets are harder or easier to grade. So if there's a set we're looking at that has a 20% gem rate, it's probably going to be a little bit trickier to find clean copies of that card compared to a set that has an 80% gem rate. Now, gem rate is not a perfect metric, but it is kind of a good early clue when we're looking for cards on the internet, so we don't waste a bunch of time trying to find cards from sets that are really difficult to grade. Now, the old way that I used to do this is to start by finding cards with higher gem rates. So I'd be looking in the pop report. Gemrate.com is a really good site with lots of grading data that you can use. And then once I found those sets, I would cross-reference with recent sale data to look at which are the cards that both have a high gem rate and have lots of margin built into the PSA 10s. Then when I found those cards, it was off to eBay to search for the clean copies to buy. Now, this definitely works, but the problem is it takes hours and hours of manual research. And so after many years of doing it the painful long way, I actually built a tool that automates this whole process. It's called the Card Opportunity and Investing Navigator, or COIN for short. And what COIN does is it compiles all the key data points in one place, and then it spits out a ranked list where we can see the cards that have strong grading upside based on the latest market data. So here's how I would use this in this scenario where we're looking for cards with $250 of upside built into them. So I'm just going to start by filtering, and I'll add a filter for, let's see, PSA 10 margin. We want greater than or equal to $250. Apply filters, and that's just going to give us the cards that actually have $250 or more of margin built into them. So now all I have to do is pick one of these cards. So I actually like basketball. Actually, let's use the Steph Curry card because it's a little bit newer. And so what we're looking at here, the raw price looks about $128. Looks like the PSA 10s are actually up a little bit lately. So they're up to $450 or so. And we're looking at a 60% gem rate. So that tells me that we're likely going to be able to find clean copies of this card if we go and search for them on eBay. And if I want to see the latest news on Steph and just get some card specific insights here on this specific card, I can just click this here and it'll give me all of that in one place. So what I like about this is based on where we are in the calendar year and the expected grading turnaround time, we're actually in a pretty good spot to get this card back right before next season, which is often the time when we see card values peak. So that gives me some confidence that this is a rock solid card to target for now. So once we're good with this card, all I do is click into eBay here and it takes me straight over so I can search for the clean copies of this card. And again, I do want to be picky. Keep in mind, we only want to buy the ones that look clean here. Not every card is going to be worth grading, but it is that simple to use COIN. And so instead of hours and hours of researching, what did that take me? Maybe a few seconds to land on that card and I'm already off to eBay. So that's the power of COIN. And by the way, if you want to try this tool, I'll leave a link in the description where you can take a free 7-day trial and see what you think. But otherwise, let's do a quick recap here and then we'll get into phase 3. So again, we're targeting the Steph Curry 2025 Topps Chrome Paradox Refractor. It's selling for around $130 right now raw. But for the sake of this model, let's call it $150 to be a little bit more realistic since we're going to have things like shipping and tax factored in here. PSA 10s are currently selling for around $450 and PSA 9s are around $200. So now we've mapped out the plan, we've identified the card that's going to help us get there. So let's get into phase 3, which is taking action. So the one thing I have to say before we dive into this section is that in real life, we probably wouldn't be going after just one card because availability is a real limitation here. So we might not actually be able to find 15 of that specific card, and we might have to go to similar cards that have similar numbers to get to our target of 15 cards. But for the sake of simplicity in the math here, I'm going to use just this one card for the model. Okay, so we buy 15 of our Steph Curry card for $150 a piece. That's $2,250 that we're spending on this card all in. Now remember, of those 15 cards, we're planning on about half of them not being gradable. So let's say we sell 7 of them raw. There's a corner nick that you couldn't see. There's a gash in the back that you couldn't see. There's just something wrong with the card that you couldn't see on eBay. And you don't want to waste the money on the grading fee if you know the card's only going to have a shot at an 8 or a 9 at best. So we liquidate those cards raw to get our money back so we can get that money into the next card that does have a chance at a PSA 10. And so let's say we sell for the exact same $150 that we paid for the card, and after paying eBay fees, we're down to $130.50 per card. So we actually lose about 13% to eBay fees here, which is about $20 per card. So from these 7 cards, we're actually down about $140 before we've even submitted anything for grading. Now, this seems scary to a lot of people. It's really not, as long as you can zoom out and see the big picture. So let's get our submission sent out. Now, I'm looking at those other 8 cards and I'm saying, okay, I could go in the cheapest option, but it's going to take the longest amount of time. I'm impatient. I want my cards back. I want my money out of those cards so that I can lock in my profits and get to the next one. And it's not hard on a card like this to justify going one grading level up. It's only $8 of difference with PSA right now to go from the value bulk submission to the value submission. And so instead of paying $25, we're paying $33 per card. It's a little extra money, but we get the cards back a full calendar month faster. But then from there, we're playing the waiting game, and 4 months later or so, our order comes back, and here's how we did. So of the 8 cards that we cherry picked from 15 cards total that we bought, we actually did a little bit better than expected. We get 6 PSA 10s, we get 1 PSA 9, and then we get a random PSA 6, and we don't know how that happened, but that does happen from time to time with PSA. If you know, you know. So running through the math real quick here, each of the 6 PSA 10s is worth $450, the PSA 9 is worth $200, and we'll say the PSA 6 is worth about $100. Sometimes people like to crack those out and sell them raw. I say just sell it as is and get what you can for it. But we'll say as a 6, it's less than raw cost. So to recap this, we spent $2,250 on the cards raw. We spent $264 on grading fees, so our total costs are $2,514. From the 7 cards we didn't grade, we got back $913.50 after fees. From the graded cards after fees, we did $2,349 from the 10s, $174 on the 9, and about $87 from the 6, for a total of $2,610. So our total sales on this play were $3,523.50. Now when we subtract the $2,514 of costs, that leaves us with $1,009.50 in total net profit. So our goal of $1,000 per month, mission accomplished. And again, this isn't perfect. We had a PSA 6 in there, and because we had so much upside on the cards that we graded, we still did just fine and we still hit our goal. Now, the other thing I want to call out is that we had to buy 15 cards to just get 6 PSA 10s in total, and we didn't even send 7 of the cards. So the message here is that we're not actually winning on that big of a percentage of the cards, but that's why it matters so much to target high upside cards. It is the biggest unlock in all of grading because it gives you buffer when things don't go your way, and it helps you make so much more money compared to targeting lower upside cards. That's where people get stuck in the weeds where they can never break free to the next level. And it's just math. Targeting higher upside cards will help you go faster in this market. And speaking of higher upside cards, what's cool is this one has some good upside, but there are cards with much bigger upside than this one. So imagine a card that gives you $500 or $600 of PSA 10 margin, or a card that gives you $1,200 of PSA 10 margin. If your goal is $1,000 a month of profit, you only have to find one of those every month that gets a PSA 10 to make it to your goal. So there you have it, $1,000 of profit from sports cards. Now the key to consistency here is not to do this just once, but to send an order every single month, because that way you can create some cash flow. It takes a little bit of upfront work to get those orders out on the clock while you're waiting for that first order to come back. But then once they do start coming back, you've got an order coming back every month if you put in the work to send one every month. Now, grading is one of the main strategies we help our members with inside my card investing community, Ignite. If you want to level up faster, join us. It's so much fun. And if you already grade cards and you think Coin might help you go a lot faster, you can try it for free. I'll leave a link in the description with details for both, but otherwise, we'll see you guys on the next video.